Welcome back, everyone. We now move on to our next performance. I believe you all know her, heard about her, talked about her, dreamed about her at some point during this festival. Jill Greenhalgh, the founder, artistic director of Magdalena Project. She will give us now some instructions for her performance, Daughter. So Jill, hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Deb. I'm just going to give an introduction first of all, and then Christina, who is far more technically savvy than me, will give you the instructions because we'll be going to another platform. So listen carefully. So Daughter is a performance about the mother-daughter dyad. It's a performance I've done about 22 times now in about 15 different countries with over 200 women, usually about 12 at a time. And it's an intimate performance, a one-on-one encounters, a series of one-on-one encounters. And the performance really relies on this intimacy and this connection and this eye contact, none of which we can have when we do it online in the same way. So the challenge was really how to do this online version and find out whether we could sustain an intimacy within the remote and within the technology, and it's been very challenging, to say the least. This is March before last, March 2020. We were going to do my first British daughter in Nottingham, and of course the pandemic hit, so we put it off for a year. And then Helen invited me, challenged me to put Daughter in the festival, which I accepted with the proviso that if it didn't work, I was not going to do it. Now, I have no idea if it's going to work or not. Some of you know the performance very well, indeed some of you have been in it. So I'd be very interested to know the feeling of the difference. What's really important, I'm going to hand over to Christina now, but what's really important is that you get these instructions very, very clear so that A, the performance isn't interrupted, and B, you get the full enjoyment of it. Okay, Christina.
Bueno, yo voy a traducir las instrucciones de Cristina también.
Oh, I need to go back, and I'm not sure how to go back now on my PowerPoint. Okay, here it is. So in a minute, we are going to share a link with you, which is the link for the OEA space where the performance of Daughters will take place.
Vamos a compartir el enlace para la otra plataforma donde se va a pasar Daughter, OEA.
When you use the link, the first thing you will see is this image and the platform to start loading.
La primera cosa que vamos a ver es esta página donde se va a pasar la performance.
When it loads...
Christina,
yes?
The image that we're seeing is you.
Oh, I know.
Not your PowerPoint.
Oh, we are.
I see the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
We see your PowerPoint.
Sorry, then it's me. I'm seeing Christina.
No worries, Helen. Moving on. So it will ask you for cookies, like always. So please accept cookies so you can move on.
Puedes aceptar los cookies para seguir.
And then I'm using the Chrome, but you can also use Safari or Firefox. I do prefer Chrome. It usually works best in those kind of platforms. And you will need to permission for the platform to use your microphone and use your camera. As you can see here, you will need to allow it.
Generalmente es preferible usar el Google Chrome y tienes que permitir las funciones de micrófono cámara.
We will need you to use your microphone and camera. So we would like you first to mute and turn off your camera here. And when you have the link and open it, to leave completely the Zoom space.
Vamos a usar las cámaras y micrófonos, pero para empezar esté apagada. Después tenemos que encerrar el Zoom.
This is because sometimes the camera and microphone can be occupied on Zoom, and then you won't be able to turn on your camera and microphone in the other space.
Porque por veces interfiere en la plataforma de OJ con la cámara y micrófono.
When the performance finishes, you can use the link you received as an email for this blog and come back for a discussion.
Cuando la performance se encierra, por favor, vuelvan al Zoom con el enlace que tienes en el mail para bloque 12.
When you have accepted cameras and microphones, you will be able to see yourself in the camera. You can see there is a microphone and a camera. They are turned on. I can see myself, and it asks you to enter a name.
Puedes poner su nombre ahí como está, que va a pedir para que ustedes lo pongan. Puede ver la cámara y el micrófono, el signos abajo.
Please type a name.
Puedes poner su nombre.
And click join now.
Y juntarse ahora.
When you do this, you will enter in the foyer space of the doctor's platform.
Entonces vas a entrar en esta página, en este espacio para el doctor.
You can then enter in one of the rooms where the storytellers sit and listen to their stories.
Puedes elegir en cuál nombre deseas oír las historias.
You can do this by either clicking in the image.
Puedes hacer un clic en la imagen.
Or by clicking on the left-hand side, you can see the different names of the rooms, and you can join the rooms from there.
O a la izquierda se puede ver todos los nombres y elegir por ahí.
The daughter's room is not anymore available. The rooms you will be able to see is these names and the foyer.
Sí, podrán ver los nombres de cada persona a la izquierda.
When you enter the room, you will see the storyteller in the large box, an image of the table, and a listener, one of the audiences at the bottom.
Cuando adentras a la sala, puedes ver el intérprete, también una imagen de la mesa y una persona que va a interagir con ella.
Only one audience member can be visible, and this is the person who listens the story.
Solamente una persona por sala puede tener su cámara on.
The rest who are in the same room can stay there and listen as listeners.
Las otras personas pueden quedarse en la sala, pero como oyentes.
Even if your camera and microphone might be on, you won't be heard.
Mismo que su cámara y micrófono esté on, solamente podrá escuchar.
You will actually look, and I don't know if it's visible, you will see yourself on the top right when you're a listener.
Cuando su cámara está on, podrá verse arriba con su imagen.
Now, when the storyteller finishes her story, she will ask you to leave the room so someone else can take your place in the box.
Cuando la historia se termina, la intérprete puede decir para ustedes que pueden salir de la sala para que otra persona venga a ocupar su espacio.
To leave the room, you can go back in the foyer.
Para salir de la sala, puedes volver al foyer.
Or join another room.
O adentrar en otra sala.
This is really, we need this. So when one person leaves, another takes that place. It happens automatically.
Cuando una persona adentra en una sala, esto es hecho automático.
That's why we want you to keep your microphones and cameras on for the whole performance.
Y por eso tenemos que tener las cámaras y micrófonos on todo el tiempo.
If you're picked automatically and you don't want to hear a story,
Si eres elegido como automáticamente y no quieres,
it's fine. You can leave and go to the foyer.
puedes
And then
salir,
find another room.
puedes salir al foyer sin problemas.
Jill, is there anything I'm forgetting?
No, you're absolutely marvelous, Christina. I hope everybody gets clear. Good luck.
Just to say, it works better on computer. So it's better to use a computer and not a phone or a tablet.
Es mejor que utilicen un computador. Funciona mejor en el computador que en los teléfonos.
And Christina, where is the link?
I will share it now. So I'll stop sharing this and just post it.
Please, everybody, remember to turn off Zoom completely. Otherwise, it will really disturb the performance.
Por favor, encierren el Zoom para entrar en la otra plataforma.
Just to add, sorry, Janina.
It's okay.
Just to add that on the foyer room, there is a chat box. So if you have any issues while you're on OYA, you can ask for help there and they will respond.
Si tienes algún problema en OYA, hay una caja en foyer que puedes preguntar ahí.
Otherwise, you can come back to this Zoom and Helen will try to help you.
O volver al Zoom, que Helen va a ayudarte.
I've got a question. So I go on the link first and afterwards I leave Zoom because I leave it completely.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Did exactly what I thought they would do, which is go over time, except for Fiona. It's really difficult to end it. Normally, I put my hands on their shoulders twice, but thank you very much for being there. And if anybody's got any questions or or comments, please do share them.
Well, I would just like to say that I thought it functioned incredibly well and congratulations. I think it was a really, really good choice of platform and it seemed to work very smoothly and seamlessly, and it felt, you know, the same or not the same, different, but really great doing it in this online format. So I thought it was really successful. Thank you.
I agree with you, Helen. Having seen a couple of daughters live, and it's always very moving, once I understood how to move around, I really enjoyed it too. And I enjoyed that the pieces were quite short. So I could get onto the beginning of a story quite easily. And it was the thing that I was worried about. And I congratulate you because there's some wonderful humor and terrible sadness as well as our stories are. Thank you so much.
Someone said this week that the different platforms are akin or are like reveal the architecture of the internet, and this daughters was like a very intricate part of the architecture, but it was accessible, you know, totally accessible streets and avenues and doors and places, and that felt really good. So as you said, Deborah, being able to get in easily and out just felt like a welcoming environment. Thank you.
It was fantastic having heard Jill's anxieties. I'm amazed. Congratulations to Christina. I mean, just gobsmacking, the technology really. And also it worked. I mean, it was very moving. My only complaint is that I wanted more time. I wanted to listen to more stories. It was lovely. And I'm amazed, given how difficult it is to feel intimacy online. And of course it's not the same as being in person, but it did have a really lovely quality. Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to say thank you so much to all the performers. I was absolutely amazed by how well they managed the space and the sense of intimacy that they managed to create with the listeners. They really drew me in, and it was very, very engaging. So thank you very much.
And I also would like to say that it was very interesting to see how you were not all in the center of the camera, and we could see different positions with your tables, and that was very, very beautiful, because we have some kind of a other perspective than just the flat framing. It was very nice to see.
I really agree with that, actually. It was lovely to, from watching so many Zoom performances, it's lovely to have some autonomy as an audience member and be able to kind of flick between different stories and get some variation, and all the stories were beautiful and unique. So thank you.
I think Jill probably wanted us to be a bit more in one relation to the camera, but the reality of trying to kind of get yourself in the picture and as much of the table as possible with different laptops, in my case a desktop, meant that wasn't always possible, and so it's good to hear that it actually worked better for some people to have that slight variation.
Actually, I wanted to ask to the performers how this was for you. If you could connect with the others, if you have done this before in presence, and what would be the difference now? How was your experience?
I think it was interesting actually, because we've been rehearsing with each other, you know, so obviously we know each other, so you kind of don't have that thing of having to kind of connect with somebody and make a relationship immediately. And that was, but that kind of, for me, took all the nerves away from it, because you just suddenly are with these women that you want to talk to, and you just have to remember your story, you know, and slow down and try and make that connection. My neck's really hurting because I found that I was literally kind of like leaning into the screen so much, you know, because I was trying so hard to reach out that it's all gone into my neck. But it was very enjoyable, yeah.
Thank you very much for that. I particularly enjoyed the ironies in all the stories and the little contradictions, and there's nothing like objects really to hold so much life and relationships. I was just wondering, Jill said in the beginning that you've done several shows, and I was wondering whether over time do you change your story, not change the stories, but in the way you do it or the detail of it, because there's something that you learn from interacting with your people who visit your room. Has anything changed over time?
Oh, Maya, that is such a compliment. We've never done this before.
I thought she said you had.
Yeah, no, this was the first time, I think, for all of us participating and meeting with you. This was our first outing. And Jill was very, I mean, we did have very strict rules in a sense. We had to follow, obviously, with the technology, but the whole process, I mean, I can't wait to do this live, because that's where we're heading, and that sense of intimacy. But I have to say, you know, I can see your faces now on the screen, and it was wonderful being able to meet you, and the privilege, the honor in a way, to be able to share a story. But I think what we were doing is, I didn't necessarily know what was going to come out of my mouth until I met with you. And that was, I think, the real joy to discover in this format, that we can be spontaneous. We can actually be full of these stories and find a way of connecting with the individual. So that's what brought me joy.
I think we'd each identified certain stories that we were going to tell, but the way of telling them, you might have particular points you wanted to touch on, but the specific way of telling them was about you interacting with that person. And I think for me, it was a great relief to actually suddenly at last have an audience, because we'd done it a lot with each other, and it ended up feeling a bit like, got to this point, I just need to somehow have something different here. And the difference was actually having real people who were not us, and who were a proper audience, actually being able to take off, really.
We have, we have a question, which I think it's building on the question about, have you done it before? So I guess Jill has done it before, and the question for Jill, how is the dramaturgy developed? And Jill says, the structure led the dramaturgy. So I guess the further question would be, what was the structure like?
Well, the structure is very simple when it's live. It's each storyteller has a table and 2 chairs, and people come and sit at the table, and the storyteller focuses just completely on them and decides which story they're going to tell. And there are witnesses. If there's 50 people in the room and 12 tables, then there's a lot of people also eavesdropping or being witnesses. And in many ways, it's as simple as that. The work is basically to get to work on the stories and to get the performers to really take control of their space and their objects and their right to tell a story.
And has that structure developed during the course of all the performances you directed, or the way you try to compose the structure, or to...
No, the structure, well, I've done it.
Or lead the actors, might be. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I meant, Jill, in the way you lead the actors or you direct.
Well, the performance has developed, but it's been in this format for at least the last 15 or 16 performances. And each time I do it, it's with a different group of women, who are all individuals. But the structure remains the same and the work is the same, but obviously the outcomes are slightly different because the individual women are so distinct. But no, I think the structure is very solid, as what you saw today. But in the live performance, it's more solid. I was very tense today about this platform and doing it.
It was great.
I think the difference, Jill, though, this time has been that we've held them for so much longer, haven't we? Because normally you work with people for a few days, whereas we've been doing this for a long time. So actually, I think we've all gone on huge journeys with our mothers, because, when you tell a story the first time, for me anyway, there was a huge kind of emotional kind of thing to that. And through working in this way over a longer period of time, the story sort of lands in you in a different way. So I think I would have told it differently if we'd just done it in a few days, and then I'd done it from where we've landed now, because we've worked for such a long time on this.
There's a question for the performers. How did you choose the story? Some were really emotional, others fun and light. Was there a deliberate mix? It's from Martha. For all the performers.
Lily.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. At first I felt like I didn't have any story. The way we were developing it, a lot was kind of thinking on the spot, in a sense, in the sessions, and responding, or at least definitely for me, because I look after a 2-year-old, and finding time to do any preparations always feels so difficult. So I was really using the rehearsal spaces to just be fully present and trust what came out quite organically there. And so, you know, at first I was kind of like, oh, well, what stories can I tell about which objects? And it kind of organically grew from that, that some stories were lighter, some stories more profound. But I think, you know, even with some stories, that it's not about, really being able to step back and it not being like, this is the profound story, you know, that they all have to kind of carry the lightness of just telling it, so that the audience has the freedom then to just respond to the words that are being said, rather than us kind of like leading the way that they are thinking about that story. And I actually had kind of a few days ago a moment where I kind of really reflected, like, this is a real opportunity to share these stories, and do I want to rethink some of the things that I'm choosing to tell, like now that I've got much more of a wealth to choose from. And I went back and kind of thought, actually, you know, I was sharing a story about my mum having TB and the moment where she kind of died and chose to live again. And that wasn't one of my stories at all. But I suddenly was like, hang on a minute, let's shift another one out and bring that one in. So I think, as Fiona said, having time over the space of these kind of months of just meeting for a small time every week, but then the mind has had time to kind of filter out and change within that time. Sure, everyone else was completely different to me, so we all had our journeys.
Any of the other performers want to say anything to the question of choosing their stories?
Well, yeah, because I had all these letters from my mum, and I thought, oh, do I have other memories than these letters, which are very critical about me? And but during the time we had, it really developed in a way of gratitude to my mother, and I saw her in a different light, because I kind of had put her in a drawer in a way, remembering, and all of a sudden there was this personality blooming in front of me, and that was great, because, well, she's dead now since 2003, and I couldn't ask her anything. I couldn't, loads of things I might not have remembered, but there were moments which were, intimate and friendly and nice moments, and to discover those and bring them out, and still have these other things, but from looked at from a different angle. That was a whole journey to me, and I'm very grateful to have been able to do this journey thanks to Jill. Thank you very much, and to Tanya, who told me about it as well. So yeah.
I was going to say that, I mean, for me, at the beginning, I think I had a sense of this had to be some deep excavation of my relationship with my mother and dealing with quite traumatic stories and so on. And during the course of it, both because of speaking to her and also, I guess, because of COVID and the lockdown and so on, it's become much more about actually my relief that my mother is still around, but also along with that, a sense of there's an anxiety in the sense of fragility, which for me became bound up with the very fragile flowers, pressed flowers, that part of my table and my installation. But at the same time, moving towards lighter stories about actually which came out of the objects as well. What's really important are lots of positive things which are not traumatic, which are about gardens and about flowers and about things which I hadn't really appreciated until I did this, quite how far they were and are kind of my legacy from my grandmother and from her, and that continues on, if that makes sense. So.
The other thing that's maybe quite interesting to know, and I'm sure some of you that have worked on it before, is that Jill gets us to work with a partner, or I can't remember what your term is for it, Jill, but we have someone who we share some of our stories with outside the process as well. And my partner was my daughter. So there's been a really sort of strong process of her hearing my stories and me talking to her about her grandmother and her reflecting on our relationship and on her relationship with her grandmother as well, which has been incredibly precious. And as well, I think it makes me realise, or I realised when I was put, because I used my daughter to rehearse them sometimes, and so she would hear all of my stories one after another, you know, whereas obviously you're moving around between them. So it's kind of, she talked about how you sort of see this woman from all these different angles, you know, all these different ways of looking at her as well. So they're kind of like these separate pieces that are about these women. And then obviously what happens, the serendipity of moving between all these different women and how they speak to each other, which is so wonderful in this work.
We have quite a few questions coming up, but also a lot of just comments. I felt the connection with the performance, and I felt we were looking at each other. Thank you all. Thank you all the participants. The stories were very moving. Thank you, Christina, for making the experience possible with your work with the platform. And here's a question for Jill from Constanza. What about your experience, Jill? What do you think about this online version? How do you perceive it so far?
Well, it was a lot more relaxed and functioned a lot more than I thought it would in the middle of last night. And I couldn't sleep. There are some things I would change. You know, the ending was really khaki. So I have to find a way to get my performers to listen to me. We'll talk about that afterwards. I think there are a few comments at the beginning that the music, I don't think we've got the music right at all. So I think on an online version, I'd probably take the music away. But that doesn't mean I would in a live version, because normally the music that you hear is my daughter singing. And I really want that. What we've been doing recently is she performs live, and that's much better than having the recording. So there are a few things I would change. I swore in the middle of last night that I'm never going to do this again online, and I can't wait to do it live. So I think I have to think about it, really. I don't feel that there is the connection in the same way. I've been thinking a lot about it during the festival. There's so many interesting discussions and different performances, and I'm asking what's important, what's the essence that we have to hold on to. And I must admit, more was held on to during this than I thought might be possible. It was great. Thank you, performers. Thank you, Christina.
Helen says, I might ask you to do it again online, Jill.
And I know.
But one thing, what you said now, what was it at the ending, with the ending, that was not functioning for you? It's just interesting to know.
Do you mind, performers, if I say it?
Go ahead, say.
Everybody had to have a clock, and they had to stop as near as possible to 3:50. I said it 16 times. Yeah. And I said, I know what will happen. You will ignore me saying this. So I said it again and again. And what did they do? They ignored me, except for Fiona, who's a very good girl.
I think it was a bit problematic. Somebody's just sat in the space and appeared automatically. I guess it's partly Oye. It delivers you the next person, and then you go,
yeah,
oh,
but
do I tell them a story, or do I say, sorry, go away? It's too late.
No, you take control of the situation, Susan.
Okay.
And you stick to the rules.
Go away. It's too late to have a story. It's bedtime.
I was lucky because my timing worked. Somebody came in just like 3 or 4 minutes before it was due to stop. And so I just was able to go, thank you very much, and switch off afterwards.
Yeah, I didn't know if I was meant to switch off. So then I ended up with people still kept popping in, and I'm like, go to the foyer. Until I was finally like, I'll go.
Yeah, if we did it again, we'd work on the ending.
I was the second person to stop Jill, by the way.
Sorry?
I was the second person to stop Jill, by the way.
You were actually.
So.
Apologies. So that's stuff that came with it. Well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, we would work on it. It should smoothly go out, not have to have notes.
So how does it end in the real show? Do the lights just go off?
Now, in the real show, I go around and I put my hands on people's shoulders. And they still ignore me. They still ignore me. So I do it twice or 3 times.
And then you whack them.
And then, no, and then the hands on the shoulders, basically, they should come to the end of that story and then just go into complete stillness. And bit by bit, the audience realize they're not going to get any more out of the performer.
Can I add something which I found really interesting about the process, which was obviously in terms of object work, because we were all sent off to research and find, and some people had objects, others didn't have so many objects. So that was a key thing. And what I began to find was that something like, I mean, I didn't tell the story really about, you know, like a palette knife, is that it had been sitting in a drawer unacknowledged. So there was something about this process which was about finding things and realizing the potency of the objects. But there was something else that we did as well within the process. We had to create those photos that you saw, aerial view. And so that whole process of creating the aerial view, the image, and how then to work within the frame. And I'm looking at Helen really with your earphones on, Magdalena online, is that I do have, whereas Jill, I think, has a reticence in a way towards the format, I have a real fascination with how you can actually make it work. And I found that the storytelling part of it, you know, I would want to go more really in that area. Just because I think we were scratching the surface in terms of how objects might be used and manipulated as well within the frame.
I think it's really interesting. So when I saw, this is what I wanted to talk to you about, Deborah, because you framed your performance so well, and I'm trying to understand why. Was it because the camera was a long way away?
One thing was the camera was quite far away and very low down to be able to include me and the objects, but also most of the objects were very vertical, so they could be seen. So anything that was lying flat, for instance, a cockroach at the end, I had to like fudge it so that people could see what it was, hopefully understand what it was, and then it would go flat because it didn't have much height. So it's a real thing of just, I think it's a real thing of practicing in the frame. And as you say, the objects, like Tanya, the objects of the knife, the potency, as you say, of these objects that you don't consider because they're not particularly fabulous or they're not particularly anything, and they're sitting there for years, and for some reason they take on something. And I think it's a fascinating field. And it was really great seeing the kind of mandala overhead shot and then seeing how you brought everything close to the camera. And I think it works. I had the advantage of being in black, so things were sort of, could jump a little bit more. Instead of having your sitting room or your kitchen behind, there wasn't much distraction from the ambience behind. But certainly the verticality of objects makes a big difference. or as Lily, when you had your blanket, the photo, and you brought it up so we could see it really well, and then there it is, and then you encase yourself in it. So there's a lovely movement on different levels of the object, like the blanket telling the story, and finally giving you the hug that brought it back to the little photo in the beginning. So there was some lovely, yeah.
I would like to mention something about that. It's something that I just noticed. Not everyone was in the same space, of course. So the backstage, the background was not neutral at all, as it is in the live versions. So I have to say that personally, I got super distracted with some super appealing objects in the background of some of you. And actually, I wanted to ask, and what about that kettle behind you, for example? I don't know who was the one who had a kettle for watering the plants, for example. But then, of course, that was not the point. And I knew that. So, of course, I didn't ask. But yeah, I wanted to share this because it's something that, yeah, it affects the thing, can affect to the good or for the bad. I'm not sure, but I wanted to share this.
Can I ask, Jill, I don't know whether it started with you or it was something you shared amongst you, but was there a kind of framework? There seemed to be something linking all the stories. So I was wondering whether there was a framework set for what kind of stories for people to look for or objects, or was it just, it didn't seem to be just go out and look for it. There seemed to be a framework.
No, there wasn't. It was really just to find your stories. And of course, you know, we went, like Lily said, she went through a lot of different stories, but some of these stories I hadn't heard, in fact. So I think it's, instead of the stories having a link, it's the way of telling and the presence. That's what we work on, the presence, the way of telling, killing any sentimentality, which always raises its head. Being in control of the story so that the listener can reflect upon their mother. That's what I'm after.
Yeah.
That they have sympathy for this story with.
I mean, there was more structure at the beginning, wasn't there, in terms of we had that thing where you had to reduce it to 2 very sharp sentences, Jill. That was a sort of way into finding your own material, but then it became looser after that. I spoke to so-and-so and they told me about my mother, or I spoke to my mother and she said, and that was a very specific starting point. But then it's kind of gone on in multiple directions, depending on the individual objects after that.
Jill, can I ask a question?
Me too.
Oh, did I jump in on someone?
Cordula. She'll forgive you.
Okay. You just mentioned that presence was something that was one of those things that you worked on, and I had actually written a question earlier, wondering how you worked with presence in this format, and how it was the same or different to working live.
Yeah, we worked for 3 hours every Monday morning, basically, and you know, I tried to bring in the same principles as I would if I was working live, but there are a lot of exercises that are physical exercises in the space that I was not able to do, and I found that very frustrating. And it's another reason I can't wait to get into a proper rehearsal space with this lot, because they're all really fabulous. And do those exercises, because I think they really give some gravitas and they make the performer present, more present. Not that they weren't, they were very present. But yeah, the work on presence is, for me, is fundamental. And that's to do with control as well, and being in the moment. Because the moment you're not there, we see it. And especially in a format like this, we see that that person is not there or is not in control. It's like a Felicia beacon. So the exercises are all around that. And it was frustrating not to be able to do those. It was also frustrating not to be able to go up to somebody's table and make it better. No, it's just like sometimes I'll be banging at my table. But I look forward to that, ladies.
So oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's a big question, Dawn, but I've done all that work with you. We've done it together. You know what I'm on about.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was asking. I was just curious about how you would have or could. Yeah.
Hard.
Yeah.
Can I ask Dawn? You've done the live, daughter?
No, I haven't. No.
All right. Is there anybody here who's done the live, daughter? I can't. Janina.
Janina, Leticia, Nera, quite a few people.
It would just be really interesting from our point of view to hear a slight sense of what your perception from having done it live, watching it in this format.
Just hold on. I think Cordula wants to say something that she was trying before, and I will comment on that after.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm not so keen with this technique, and I don't know if I just should start to speak or wait until the other finish. But I have a comment to you, Jill, because I have been in some of the live performances, and I think both of the versions are very interesting, but they are very, very different. For example, what what is in the live version, it's the whole atmosphere in the space and the others, and they are more or less whispering, and you are a kind of very privileged in getting these stories. In this online version, I felt very much the way the performers were performing. So they were very much conscious of the action, of the movements, how to take the picture, to put it towards the camera and so on. In the live performance, you have much more the impression of being in a very personal talk. And this is missing in the online. But online is, of course, a possibility to bring people together who are not in the same space. So maybe it is worth to explore more, like Tanya says, to explore more how you can use it, but nevertheless stop to make the live performances, because now we went into one space, and then we had the line on the left side, we had the comments, and we can see who is with the others. So there is a lot of distraction of the artistic or creative space. So this was my comment. Thank you.
So just to answer the question, for me, I've both seen the performance in presence and done it in Chile with Constance. I guess she was there too, and I think these are two very different experiences, because of course we have some resources when we are in the presence. For example, I can whisper something in somebody's ear. I can go around them. I can move around, or I can. So we have other possibilities with the space, playing with the space and the objects, and of course the 3-dimension thing that we can, as an audience, also we can go around and see things from different perspectives. So when we see these online, we have one perspective, but also I was very happy to see, because I could also feel very intimate in the online. And I think it was very successful in that way. And I think the thing is not to try to bring the same thing for the online, but actually to experience and to experiment in this other field and see what it can bring. And I think it was a very, very successful experiment, and I was very happy to see it.
From what Cordula was saying, it sounded like there was a kind of a more of a unity of and similarity when you're all at the tables and so on. I mean, did it feel for the audience kind of unified enough? Were all the rooms, was it good that they were different? Did they feel very different, and the manners and the approaches of each of us? How, someone comment on that? So Deborah's nodding.
Some were more successful visually. Some were more successful visually if there was not a lot of distraction, and if there was not any reflection of the light off your computer or camera. Especially with photos, that reflection is sort of like, I wanted to see them, it was like closer, closer, just a bit closer. So when that was achieved, there was no problem. Now, in the live versions that I've been an audience in, generally the tables are under pools of light and you're in darkness. So you move around and you are kind of, it's like in a strange peep show. You are a witness. You can go sort of behind the storyteller. You're aware that you can observe the storyteller speaking to just one person. And it also means you can go away if it has touched you in a very deep way. You can go off into the darkness and cry or think about it. Here, I think you all really chose well your stories, because I was touched, but I was also like the light bulb story. Something that this is, I think, the power of the object and the power of the simplicity of a story. Suddenly it was like, I don't like anyone holding the ladder when I change a light bulb. My basic mistrust. And so then I'm hearing the story about this terrible person, and I almost feel like I'm at the bottom going, bring the fucker down. Just move that, push that ladder. And it was sort of like a collective, an experience I shared viscerally without ever knowing why I didn't want anyone underneath a ladder. So that to me is I'm sorry, I think I've gone off the actual track, but that was also very powerful. But I didn't mind, I didn't go, oh, I'm missing the darkness. Oh, I'm missing it live. I just went, this is this experience. So it just depended on some technical things. Can I see the object? Where does the gaze go in terms of where the actual camera is? There's always this other tricky thing. But I like being able to look at the person, the other person that was in the thing. I had that same thing of almost being a voyeur as well, of seeing you and seeing who your key person was. I think that worked well.
Can I just say that we don't have any other events for the next 4 or 5 hours, so we don't have really a rush to end this. But Jill, whenever you feel like you want to close this, we can do it, okay? Because I feel this discussion can go on for for hours.
I want to say something. I seen it and I did it as a performer. Also, my mother did it. And I have seen it a couple of times and I was deeply moved. I mean, even though it was online, it really touched my heart. I was sobbing. It was very powerful for me anyway. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I had a question for the audience. How did it feel? Because I had one person at the end who was like, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting to talk to you. Like, I've been listening to it so that I can be the person here. because they had a question about a particular object that I hadn't talked about. And so, yeah, I just kind of wondered as audience members, whether you felt like, because I think it's a bit random, and I think someone wrote on here that they seem to always be like the person being seen, and whereas there were other people that like maybe never got saw by anyone. And maybe if there's someone here who never got saw by anyone, like how did that feel? Or if you were always being seen, did you actually be like, let someone else have a go? Just the kind of nature of that side of things, really being a seen or unseen audience member.
I had, for example, I was always outside, so the kind of voyeuristic person. And there is also a difference for the live performance. If you go live, I think you put the focus on the storyteller. And now if you are online, you can also put the focus on the one who is the visitor. And when you are outside, it's nice and touching to observe this conversation or the dialogue and between the both of them. So this I can say. And I went around to all the women and I listened to the stories, and yeah.
There's he said here in the chat asking if this is the last event in the festival, and I just want to say that no, we still have a new performance, Be Like Body or Obsolete, at 9 p.m. UK time, and we have the cleaning up discussion, which is the closure of the festival with Zoe. So we still have a few more things to go. And that's very important that you all join us in your toilets if you can.
Can I just add something about a spectator who was seen quite a lot in various rooms? Yeah, I really found interesting to watch, but after a little while, I felt I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be the listener. I felt that being in the position of being a listener, not because you're watched by the other audience members, but was creating a more sense of intimacy and more connection with the performance and the performers. I really enjoyed that moment of intimacy. It gave me a chance to influence the performance as well, with a smile, with a nod, with my energy, with my presence. So I think that was really important. It made me feel that that story was shared because I was there making it happen with all of you. So thank you for that experience. That was really brilliant. Thank you.
Can I talk, Carinsa? Hello. I was the person, is that okay? Yeah. I was the person who kept going straight into the box almost immediately, and it made me a little bit anxious at first because I wasn't sure how much of these stories were improvised. Who was I as the person listening to the story? How many questions could I ask, or was I not to ask questions? And hello, Lily's got a baby. And yeah, but then, I was like, okay. I think Ulrike was quite quick getting me to move on. Like, she was very good at cutting the question. Whereas, yeah, so it was that sort of thing for me. And then I wanted to I was the opposite. I wanted to take the break because as a listener on this format, like, basically you're just spending the whole time this close to the screen, shaking and smiling because you're trying to give something to the other person on the other side. And what I think the last one with Tanya, because we both met, we were both like faces right in there. So, and that's that part of this Zoom thing, is that it is more tiring. Like, you do need that chance to go into the darkness, especially if you're being on the camera all the time. So that was my experience. And at the end, I jumped off into the foyer just to not be on camera. Not because of you guys. I thought it was just so wonderful. And I thought, Jill, it really worked. It really worked. It really worked for me because I'm I'm not going to see it live. I'm not going to have this experience, Jill. So do it, try it again, like Deborah says, once or twice or whatever. But don't stop it. It will still be valuable for the audience that's live, but it was valuable for me.
I found it really interesting, the decision about which story I give to which person, because Jill had encouraged us not to make choices about which, until we met the person. And so that was really interesting. And sometimes there were a couple of stories that are really difficult, and difficult to repeat. And in fact, I did do both of them twice, the difficult ones, but I did have a feeling of, okay, I think I can tell this person this story. I don't know why. It was just in a split second you make that decision. And then there was something about the rhythm of it where you thought, oh, I can't face telling that story again. I need to find something lighter. I need to find something that's, a bit easier, because of almost like the dramaturgy of what I'm doing, the choices that I'm making. It's so fast, you've got no beat to sort of revamp or reset before you were into the next one. So it was very fast, as a performer, sort of going from one to the next.
I was going to say that I found it a little disconcerting a couple of times where I was thinking, oh, I wonder if this person who's just arrived in the box, in the square, was hearing the last story in the dark, and what if I repeat myself, and is that a problem? And then I kind of blocked it out and thought, no, it doesn't matter what they saw or didn't see or hear before. We'll just go on and do it to them as if it's a new story. But I guess if you were doing it live, you'd have some sort of peripheral awareness of who was watching as an eavesdropper, as well as who was actually sitting there, and you'd kind of be a bit more aware of that. It would be part of what you'd bring to the next story or not bring to the next story, depending on where they had been previously.
I think, Susan, I mean, we touched on it in the rehearsals, but for me, it really makes no difference. You are with that person who sat with you. Forget about everybody else, and forget about if they've heard it or not. If they've heard the story already, or they can go to another room. It's their choice. They're in charge of themselves, and you're in charge of yourself. So I think that happens in the live version as well. At least I try to encourage that.
Sorry, are all the performers experienced performers, or some of you new?
I began as an actor about 100 years ago, but I haven't done it for a very long time. Although I don't really feel I don't see this as acting, it's just as performing, but I'm a dramaturg and a writer normally.
Similarly to Fiona, I'm a writer primarily. I work with performance, but not usually as a performer, but it is a different kind of performance. It's storytelling. And yeah, so it was very interesting to kind of be challenged to actually be inhabiting those issues about presence and yes, and voice and issues of performance, which I usually deal with in terms of others, and be back in that place myself, which I hadn't been for quite a long time.
Everyone, we would like to make a suggestion because the people in the organizing team, we need to have a few things, do a few things, eat, pee. We are going to give you the link for the observer story, where you can go there and you can continue the conversation. You can have your cameras and your audios on, and you can keep on discussing and having this conversation there. Is that okay? And so you can also have a look at the observer story if you haven't still yet done it, and you can just make your avatar with your name, and then you can, it's just like the OYA platform where you do your avatar and then you put your name there, and you can still have your videos and audios there. And we would like very much to thank Jill, to thank all the performers today, Susan, Tanya, Ulrike, Fiona, Lily. Did I forget anyone? Thank you so much. Thank you for accepting the challenge, Jill, and we will see you all for block 13, the last block of the first online Magdalena Festival. So please come and bring your drinks, bring your ideas, your thoughts, and we will have a little bit of a party to end the festival. Thank you so much, everyone. Gracias a todas. Merci, obrigada.
Muchas gracias, muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Yeah.